Okay, let's unpack this central anxiety that I think plagues almost every ambitious person listening right now. It's this idea of a fixed professional finish line.
It's relentless, isn't it? I mean, we are constantly bombarded with these narratives, especially across, social media, startup culture, that you have to achieve your magnum opus, your greatest success by the time you're 25, maybe 30 if you're lucky.
Right. If you haven't invented some disruptive app or, secured a spot on a 30 under 30 list, there's this insidious feeling that somehow you've missed the boat.
That you're just a little too late to be truly revolutionary. And it's a terrible feeling.
And that feeling of too late is the exact reason this deep dive into the source material is so vital for you, the learner. Because that overwhelming pressure, that sense of information overload about what success should look like, is completely undermined, gloriously so, by the incredible life story we're about to explore.
Precisely. Today, we are diving into the life of a true global icon, someone whose name is Just. It's globally synonymous with luxury, with elegance, and with the total reinvention of an entire industry. Vera Wang.
But the key here is that her path wasn't linear. It wasn't fast, and it certainly wasn't without some really painful setbacks.
No, not at all.
Our mission today is clear: to extract the key lessons in perseverance, in relentless passion, and I think most importantly in strategic timing, from a career that began its core business, its eventual billion-dollar trajectory, at the age of 40.
40.
It's an amazing number, and she didn't just start her empire late. She started it after 2 decades of intense, high-level professional training that was, essentially paid for by industry titans.
That's the part that's so fascinating. It is. What's so interesting here is how her early disappointments weren't just simple roadblocks. They were the essential prerequisite training for her ultimate calling. She wasn't an immediate success. She spent 20 years, as the sources clearly show, learning the intricacies of aesthetics, branding, supply chain, and, high-stakes networking. She waited, she learned, and then, only when she was supremely qualified, did she launch.
So when you hear the name Vera Wang, you immediately think, the queen of wedding gowns. Our sources confirm this identity is global. It's instant.
The one and only.
But what we need to establish right away is that the queen of wedding gowns business was her third professional career.
Her third. And it only launched after 2 major, very public setbacks in the first 2.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate reassurance that your current role, even if it feels tangential or, frustrating, is just training you. It's training you for the thing you are truly meant to do 10 or even 20 years down the line.
So let's go back to the beginning to really understand the foundation of that drive. We're in New York City, June 27, 1949. Vera Wang is born into a world that is, it's sophisticated and exceptionally disciplined.
Oh, incredibly so. Her mother, Florence Wu, was a UN translator. So right away, you're talking about exposure to diplomacy, to multilingualism, different cultural expectations from a very, very early age.
And her father, Ching Wang, was a highly successful businessman in the pharmaceutical industry. So this wasn't just a wealthy background. It was an environment steeped in discipline, high expectations, and a really global outlook.
Exactly. I mean, she attended elite schools, the Chapin School, Sarah Lawrence College, and she even studied at the prestigious University of Paris. All of this was broadening her intellectual horizons far beyond the average person's.
That sophisticated backdrop definitely provided the intellectual framework. But the true burning passion, the obsession, was entirely athletic. From the age of 8, her first love was figure skating.
And this wasn't just a casual after-school activity. This was her life. She dedicated herself entirely to this relentless, highly demanding pursuit with a singular laser-focused goal.
To compete on the U.S. Olympic team.
Nothing less. And figure skating at that level, it demands not just talent, but just maniacal discipline. The hours on the ice, the internalization of constant critique, the focus on minute muscular detail, these habits were forged during her adolescence.
She pursued this dream all the way through her early 20s, competing seriously in national championships. She even appeared in Sports Illustrated. I mean, she was good.
She was very, very good, but not quite good enough for that ultimate prize.
And this is where the first major emotional setback hits. A rejection that must have been just absolutely devastating for someone so profoundly driven. The source material is very clear that her Olympic dreams were eventually, quote, derailed by the realization that she lacked the necessary level of skill.
Or, to put it more bluntly, the brutal truth that she wasn't going to make the Olympic team.
The sources refer to this disappointment explicitly as her first heartbreak. And you have to just sit with the emotional weight of that for a second.
Oh, absolutely. To dedicate a decade of your life, sacrificing your social life, enduring physical pain, focusing on a single crystalline goal, only to realize you don't have that final necessary ingredient to reach the top tier.
For someone so committed, that kind of rejection would feel like a fundamental, profound sense of failure. It's an identity crisis, really.
It is. Most people faced with that level of rejection from a core part of their identity would either, quit the sport entirely or maybe retreat into a completely safe, low-risk career.
But Wang did something much more insightful. She didn't abandon the skills. She just transitioned her ambition.
That's the key analytical point right there. While she failed to achieve her goal as a competitor, the discipline, the perseverance, and that incredible eye for detail she developed on the ice, she kept all of it.
That discipline just metastasized into her creative and professional life. The skills didn't vanish. They just changed context.
And we have to spend a moment connecting those skating skills to her later design work because it's not an obvious leap, but it's so important.
It's everything. Figure skating is this demanding art form that requires an intrinsic understanding of performance, of movement, and of the physics of how fabric behaves on a body undergoing high torque and speed. It's basically engineering disguised as art.
Absolutely. Think about the difference. Designing a gown for a bride who is walking slowly down an aisle is a static challenge. But designing a costume that has to withstand the torque of a triple jump that must look weightless yet hold its shape. That's dynamic design engineering. It's a whole different ballgame.
That fundamental understanding of physics, ease, tension, and movement, combined with the high-stakes, one-shot nature of performance, where a single broken strap can ruin an entire routine, that informed her entire future approach to fashion.
She learned that excellence requires sacrifice, and that failure to execute is a temporary condition, not a permanent identity. She gained this unique expertise on the front lines of her own failure.
And this resilience, born from that early heartbreak, it became her guiding professional motto. It's what allowed her to risk everything 2 decades later.
We see this spirit crystallized in her own words later on when she said, "Don't be afraid of failing. I think not trying is worse than failing. Have the courage to try." That setback, that heartbreak at age 19 or 20, it didn't define her. It laid the foundation for the courage she would need to risk everything on a new venture 20 years later.
It's such a powerful lesson for anyone in their 30s or 40s feeling stagnant. Your past disappointments, they're your deep hidden qualifications. Okay, so the Olympic dream ends. She has this profound athletic discipline, but no immediate path forward. But the pivot into a new field is immediate, though perhaps a little accidental, and it's equally high stakes: fashion journalism. After finishing college, she got her start at Vogue magazine as a temporary assistant.
And that temporary assistant status was just a blink. Her ascent was meteoric, which just proves that the drive and sheer work ethic developed on the ice translated perfectly to the editorial environment. By just 23 years old, she became one of the magazine's youngest fashion editors.
And this wasn't a quick stint. This was a career anchor. She spent a monumental 15 to 17 years at Vogue.
17 years.
That longevity needs careful unpacking for our listener. It was a period of intense, deep-seated professional development that you just could not replicate in a university setting.
No way. Think of what she was absorbing daily. She was immersed in the highest echelons of aesthetic excellence. This was about networking with the world's finest designers, photographers, stylists, editors.
The best of the best.
She was learning trend forecasting, editorial discipline, and, critically, how to communicate a luxury brand vision on a global scale. The source material is very clear. This tenure wasn't primarily about building wealth yet. It was about gathering priceless human capital and deep industry knowledge. She was in the fashion superhero headquarters, just soaking everything in.
But wait, 15, 17 years at the top of Vogue is incredible, but doesn't that sound a bit like classic corporate ladder burnout? We're telling people to take time to learn. But how does she avoid that trap of becoming completely stuck in an employee mindset, especially when the second major rejection hit?
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of long-term career strategy. I think she used that position not as a final destination, but as a privileged point of observation. She learned the industry's mechanisms, the marketing, the storytelling, the editorial process. But she wasn't actually making the clothes.
And she wasn't running the whole show.
Exactly. And even after this long, illustrious run, that second major career disappointment arrived. She went for the top job, the position of editor-in-chief, and was rejected.
Another gut punch.
A huge one. This must have been a crushing blow, an echo of the Olympic disappointment. The sources describe this as a major final turning point, noting she was stung and bruised by the rejection. 15 years of dedication, only to be told no for the ultimate prize.
That rejection ultimately prompted her to quit the magazine entirely. And it takes immense guts to walk away from a powerful, prestigious role like that.
Two major life goals, Olympic skater and Vogue editor-in-chief, both ended in rejection. That pattern would be enough for most people to conclude they are, fundamentally flawed professionally.
But she used that disappointment as fuel for the next pivot, which brought her even closer to the actual physical art of fashion design.
And that's where the high-level networking she did at Vogue paid off. Her reputation and contacts had already reached the right ears, as one source notes, which led her to transition to the Ralph Lauren organization in 1987. Her new role was accessories design director.
This is the crucial shift from critique and curation to creation. She went from writing about and styling fashion at Vogue to actually making it at Ralph Lauren. This was hands-on skill development in supply chain management, material sourcing, production scale, the nuts and bolts.
Exactly. She moved from the editorial side to the production side, honing a hands-on understanding of material sourcing, costing, what materials worked in practice versus just on paper, and what customers truly wanted on a massive scale. And the volume required in mass-market, luxury-adjacent design is just staggering.
The sources say she designed an impressive 18 collections while she was there.
18. That's a demanding pace that teaches you efficiency and speed like nothing else.
So if we look at this entire two-decade period, the 17 years at Vogue and the 3 years at Ralph Lauren, it cannot be seen as time wasted or time waiting. It was necessary, high-level, paid preparation. It completely flips the entrepreneurial narrative that says you have to start early.
That is the ultimate learning philosophy we extract from the source material, and it's the core message for you, the learner. We have to lean hard on her specific quote here. Don't be afraid to take time to learn. It's good to work for other people. I worked for others for 20 years. They paid me to learn.
Paid to learn. That is so profound. It radically alters the perception of age. She wasn't starting late at 40. She was qualified late because she had spent 2 decades gathering these diverse, high-level skills journalism, trend forecasting, A-list networking, accessories design, supply chain management.
All paid for by industry titans. It suggests that a long incubation period is often not just advisable, but absolutely necessary for breakthrough success in an established, complex industry like fashion. She didn't have to risk her own capital learning the basics. She used Vogue's brand and Ralph Lauren's infrastructure to acquire what was essentially an MBA in fashion mastery.
That is the greatest strategic benefit of the nonlinear path accumulated diversified competence. You are being paid right now to learn the skills you will launch your great venture with 10 or 20 years from now.
So she spent 2 decades gaining these diverse skill sets from editorial critique to supply chain production. All that accumulated wisdom is just sitting there, ready. But it needed a spark, right? A personal need. What was the catalyst that finally made the transition from paid learner to billion-dollar entrepreneur happen? It was the most universal experience possible, planning her own wedding. The year is 1989, maybe early 1990. Vera Wang is 39 years old, turning 40, and she gets engaged.
And this detail she shared, that she was a little beyond the age of most brides, is so telling. It highlights that she felt slightly outside the established mold already, and that distance allowed her to observe the market objectively and see this enormous gap that everyone else was missing.
The market problem she identified was visceral and personal. She was totally underwhelmed by the simple, traditional wedding dress options available.
I mean, if you cast your mind back to the late 80s and early 90s.
Oh, it was a time. The sources describe the options as aggressively stereotypical. We're talking over-the-top, stiff, saturated with cheap sequins, excessive lacy bits, those huge puffy sleeves.
The poofy skirts, so stiff.
Yes, the stiff, poofy skirts. It was a singular, maximalist, and often really unsophisticated aesthetic.
And for a woman who spent 2 decades immersed in the chic, clean, architectural lines of European and American high fashion at Vogue and Ralph Lauren, this aesthetic must have been horrifying.
It must have been a nightmare. She realized the market offered virtually nothing for the modern, chic, sophisticated woman who wanted something minimalist, tailored, or architecturally severe. It was a need born out of profound personal frustration.
Which, as we know, is often the most powerful fuel for entrepreneurship. She recognized that the woman who was buying a $20,000 dress was the same woman who read Vogue, and the wedding dress market was simply not catering to her at all.
So she took the ultimate action of a designer. She designed her own wedding gown. And here is where her professional network and, crucially, her disciplined background came into play with the funding. Her father, Cheng Wang, the highly successful businessman, he recognized the commercial opportunity immediately.
That business acumen was critical. He didn't just see his daughter needing help. He saw a market gap identified by a highly qualified 40-year-old executive who had proven her work ethic through 2 decades of high-level employment. He provided the pivotal $4 million startup fund.
Let's pause on that $4 million investment because it's a huge factor, and for some listeners, it might undermine the whole self-made narrative.
It's a fair question. How do we balance that foundational capital with the hard work that followed?
It's a necessary challenge. That initial investment certainly gave her leverage and mitigated a lot of early financial risk, but it was an investment in competence, not just a handout. $4 million in 1990 was immense, and her father would not have risked it on an untested entrepreneur. He was betting on the 20 years of accumulated skill she possessed.
Her network from Vogue and her supply chain knowledge from Ralph Lauren.
Exactly. The capital provided the runway, but the 2 decades of learning provided the engine and the flight plan.
Perfect. So with the capital secured, she launched. In 1990, she opened her first bridal boutique at the legendary Carlyle Hotel in New York City. And the impact was immediate, purely because of the aesthetic she introduced.
The Wang aesthetic was a complete cultural reset for bridal fashion. It was a revolutionary break from tradition. Her designs were instantly recognizable, chic, sophisticated, bold, often minimalistic, very tailored, severe architectural. She brought high fashion principles, clean lines, movement, structure to an industry that was obsessed with ornamentation and puff.
We have this marvelous detail of her very first gown, designed for a Vogue profile. It was crafted from white Lafitte Duchess satin
Beautiful fabric.
and adorned subtly with black silk velvet bows at the wrist and hemline. That use of black silk velvet against the stark white satin, it emphasized simplicity, clean lines, and almost brutal sophistication. It signaled to the world that this was not your grandmother's wedding dress shop.
And that hustle we talked about, the grit she learned on the ice and through the corporate rejection, it was instantly evident in the launch. The sources note that even before the shop officially opened its doors, she and her right-hand people were literally selling handmade gowns out of a hotel suite.
That's amazing. That determination shows that even if you have $4 million, you still have to put in the grueling door-to-door salesmanship to launch a luxury brand.
And she didn't chase volume initially. She instantly established the brand at the high-end luxury tier. Her initial prices ranged from $2,000 to $10,000 off the rack and could soar up to $30,000 for bespoke creations.
She was establishing brand equity based on quality, exclusivity, and crucially her own sophisticated aesthetic that the high-end market was just starving for.
This entire section just proves that age is irrelevant when you combine 20 years of high-level professional exposure with a clear, personally felt, unaddressed market need. She utilized everything. The editorial style from Vogue provided the brand language, and the production knowledge from Ralph Lauren allowed her to execute at a quality level that captured that missing niche immediately.
Okay, the Carlyle Hotel Boutique is a massive success, and the brand equity is established. But, as we mentioned, one boutique selling $30,000 dresses doesn't equate to a $650 million net worth and annual sales exceeding $700 million. The engine of that massive scale was smart, strategic diversification beyond just the core bridal couture.
Absolutely. The bridal gown is the aspirational cornerstone, but it's the licensing and diversification that build the financial fortress. The first major move was the ready-to-wear, or RTW, expansion, launched in 2000. This wasn't necessarily a massive profit driver at first, but it was a strategic choice to cement her reputation.
And this is where we get one of the most vital lessons in strategic patience. She later admitted the RTW line, which ran under her own name, lost money for a good 8 years at the beginning.
8 years.
8 years. That is a monumental commitment of capital and belief. Most people would have pulled the plug after 2.
That just underscores the necessity of persistence and having a strategic purpose in business. Why would you fund a losing line for 8 years? Because the RTW collection served a higher purpose. It allowed her to show at New York Fashion Week, generating press, critical acclaim, and establishing her as a versatile, cutting-edge designer beyond just weddings.
It solidified her status as a high-fashion icon, which in turn justified the luxury price points of her profitable bridal gowns.
Exactly. She didn't let those initial losses dictate the future of the brand. She used the line strategically to build what she called a holistic brand experience.
And that holistic experience quickly expanded. She didn't just stick to clothing. She moved into a full spectrum of luxury goods: lingerie, jewelry, fragrance, beauty, accessories, and these elegant home goods, including fine china, crystal, and furniture.
This diversification is key to weathering economic downturns. If the couture bridal market shrinks, you still have consistent recurring revenue from fragrances and home goods. These adjacent markets are high margin and less volatile. She created multiple strong revenue streams that were not dependent on the one-time high-cost purchase of a bridal gown.
So the next phase, what one source called the seriously smart moves, came through licensing and strategic partnerships. This is how the brand transitioned from a successful design house to a true global financial powerhouse.
This is where she starts generating consistent, multi-million-dollar revenues annually without Vera Wang having to directly manage the manufacturing and distribution of every single item. It's pure leverage.
Licensing is fundamentally about leveraging intellectual property and brand trust. So let's dissect those specific deals.
Okay, so she locked in a long-term exclusive deal with Kenmark Eyewear that runs all the way until 2030. That provides a significant, predictable stream of licensing income for years.
And the partnership with Coty Fragrances allowed her to reach completely different sensory level of consumer connection. A person who can't afford a $10,000 dress can absolutely afford a $100 bottle of Vera Wang perfume.
It democratized the smell of the brand while keeping the visual experience exclusive. It's genius.
Furthermore, the collaboration with Zales to create the Vera Wang Love Jewelry Collection, which launched in fall 2011, directly integrated her name into the fine jewelry market. Zales is a high-volume, trusted retailer, and this capitalized perfectly on her existing association with engagements and weddings.
The trust built in her dress designs translated directly into trust in her jewelry design. It's a seamless brand extension.
And then, crucially, she mastered the accessibility strategy through what are known as diffusion lines, a brilliant piece of business strategy. She collaborated with mass-market giants like Kohl's for the Simply Vera line and David's Bridal for the White by Vera Wang line.
This strategy is textbook risk management and brand equity maximization. She created this two-tiered brand ecosystem. The Carlyle Hotel flagship maintains the image of unattainable luxury and exclusivity, justifying the high price points of the bespoke gowns.
Meanwhile, the diffusion lines capture massive volume and brand recognition among consumers who aspire to the name but operate on a lower budget.
She leveraged her name for sales volume without diluting the core luxury identity. It's a perfect example of applied business strategy built on those 2 decades of industry observation.
And the ultimate validation of this long-term business strategy came recently, in 2024, with the acquisition of her intellectual property by WHP Global. This is a massive financial pivot for a luxury brand.
It is. WHP Global is an asset management firm specializing in acquiring and managing high-value consumer brands. By structuring this deal, Vera Wang became a shareholder in WHP Global, but the company took over the complexity of managing and maximizing the intellectual property.
Which means she's positioned for advanced digital commerce and expansive global market reach, specifically targeting massive emerging markets like China, the Middle East, and Latin America, where digital scaling requires specialized expertise.
Exactly. This move solidified her net worth by monetizing her decades of brand building. So her story isn't just about beautiful designs, it's about smart, long-term business acumen, a direct application of the strategy and operational skills she accumulated over those 2 decades of paid learning.
And finally, that strategy was just turbocharged by leveraging the celebrity marketing engine, thanks almost entirely to those early foundational Vogue connections.
The power of the high-profile wedding simply cannot be overstated.
No. I mean, when you have a list of iconic figures, Chelsea Clinton, Alicia Keys, Mariah Carey, Ivanka Trump, Victoria Beckham, Khloe and Kim Kardashian, Ariana Grande, Hailey Bieber, when they all choose Vera Wang for their wedding day, it turns the dress into a global media event.
It generates millions of dollars in free publicity and aspiration.
And she didn't just confine herself to bridal. Her exquisite evening wear on the red carpet, worn by Michelle Obama, Viola Davis, Sofia Vergara, Zendaya, Beyoncé, that proved her range and elevated her to the pantheon of global luxury designers. This is what transforms a specialist boutique into a luxury powerhouse.
And she fundamentally changed bridal norms, too. The sources point out her legacy of popularizing colored gowns, including blush, champagne, and even black wedding dresses, giving women explicit permission to break tradition and express individuality. It was the fusion of high-fashion creativity with the conservative bridal world that reshaped the industry forever.
This is truly the most satisfying chapter of her career, the perfect symmetry of her journey. After 2 decades of being defined by Vogue and bridal, her career circled back directly to her initial athletic dream, but now she was designing for the champions she once aspired to join.
It's a remarkable culmination that proves expertise is portable. Her fashion career provided the success and the platform that allowed her to re-engage with her first passion, not as the aspiring competitor who didn't quite make it, but as the defining artist in that space.
And the connection was made through a figure skating choreographer, Mary Scott Vold, who happened to know Wang from her own competitive skating days.
It's those old networks. This personal history facilitated her big break in 1994, designing for Nancy Kerrigan.
And the collaboration with Nancy Kerrigan was culturally and financially groundbreaking. Wang dressed her for nearly 4 years, including the 1992 and 1994 Olympics. These weren't just costumes. They were high-fashion performance garments.
They made New York Times headlines not just for their beauty, but because of the cost multi-thousand-dollar price tags that stood in stark contrast to the typically simple, often homemade costumes worn by competitors and past Olympians. She was bringing couture budgeting to the rink.
And she brought specific design innovations born from her deep understanding of the sport. She was designing for a camera, a judge's eye, and dynamic movement all at the same time.
She aimed for higher necklines to emphasize Kerrigan's beautiful long neck, a technique drawn right from her editorial eye at Vogue. And crucially, she was an early adopter of the stretch illusion craze with Kerrigan's 1994 costume sleeves, a highly delicate fabric.
And Wang later admitted her constant agonizing worry was that the fabric, which was designed for the runway, would just rip under the stress of an Olympic routine.
The technical tension is incredible. She understood that if one strap broke or if the intricate beading got caught during a spin, the athlete's whole Olympics is over. That is how serious the technical challenge is. It's not just fashion. It's performance safety engineering.
Wow. And the collaboration continued with other skating icons, highlighting the highly personalized and demanding nature of the work. Take Michelle Kwan, who Wang called an actress on the ice.
Kwan's explosive athleticism meant her outfits had to be almost like a second skin, allowing complete freedom and avoiding any interference with technique.
And Kwan had very specific, non-negotiable technical demands. Nothing near her neck and absolutely no skirt volume. Wang noted that any extra fabric was an added burden that could affect her rotation in the triple jumps.
This is where that inherent understanding of physics and body movement from her own skating days became completely invaluable to her as a designer.
Wang described the stress of this process vividly, admitting she would sometimes break out in a cold sweat sometimes 6 months before dressing Michelle, worrying if the placement of beading, which had to be stitched perfectly to the ounce, would mess up a jump rotation.
That illustrates the intense personal pressure she took on to ensure perfection.
The stress was so immense that at one point, dressing a male skater for the first time, she nearly quit the whole endeavor. She designed for Evan Lysacek for the 2010 Olympics, and she confessed to waking up with hot flashes and a rash due to the worry about the technical demands of a male athlete's power and torque.
The technological challenge for a powerful male skater like Lysacek was entirely different from the female dancers. They had to quadruple stitch the seams to withstand the enormous torque and stress placed on the garment during his jumps and twists.
And on top of that, Lysacek was acutely conscious of the weight of the fabric, requiring it to be as thin and light as possible. Her team was pushed into entirely new levels of fabric engineering to meet these needs.
And the collaboration continued more recently with Nathan Chen for the 2018 and 2022 Olympics. These were modern looks, sometimes leaning towards streetwear on ice, completely throwing out the traditional velvet and sequins.
The sources mentioned that these bold, modern designs did generate some online commentary, with people noting his outfits sometimes look like 90s Speedo swimsuits or bus seat shirts.
Which is a hilarious reflection of the high-stakes, subjective nature of performance art. But Wang embraced this artistic freedom, noting she didn't hate his Rocket Man costume, which she found daring and memorable.
The beautiful, profound part of this entire story is the symmetry. Vera Wang never achieved the level of success she wished for as a competitive skater. But later in life, the sport itself officially recognized and honored her immense contributions. In 2009, she was inducted into the U.S. Figure Skating Hall of Fame for her design work.
That is the ultimate validation of the nonlinear path. Failure led to expertise, which led to a pivot, which provided the financial and creative platform to revisit the original dream and achieve success there, albeit in an entirely different creative capacity. It proves unequivocally that the skills you acquire when one door closes will open an unexpected, even more influential window 20 years later.
As we synthesize Vera Wang's journey, the recurring motivating theme is resilience. That age is not a finish line, it's simply the cumulative measure of strategic learning. She overcame an Olympic heartbreak and a major career disappointment in Vogue before she was truly prepared, not just creatively but operationally, to launch her own company at 40.
And we have to dissect the concept of confidence, particularly for the learner who struggles with self-doubt. We assume that titans of industry must be supremely confident, yet Wang offers this profoundly honest, uncomfortable truth, she said. If I were to say at any point that I feel really confident or really in control, that would be a mistake, because I don't.
That quote is profoundly powerful, and it should relieve the pressure on anyone striving for excellence. It contrasts her massive $650 million empire with the normalcy of persistent self-doubt.
It does.
It reminds you that feeling a lack of control or battling those hot flashes of anxiety over whether beating will ruin an Olympic jump is perfectly fine. It's part of the process of aiming for perfection. Success is not the absence of doubt. It's operating effectively despite it.
And this humility is directly linked to her capacity for professional reflection, which is such a vital skill for growth. She highlights the need to learn from every mistake, stating, "I always see where I didn't do things the right way." The focus isn't on dwelling on the error, but on critically analyzing, correcting, and improving the process. You have to be able to recognize what went wrong operationally to make it right strategically.
So if we strip away the luxury, what is the core advice she offers? The aspiring creative, the learner who feels like they're just settling in their current, non-glamorous role. It comes down to identifying and pursuing genuine, deep passion.
Absolutely. Her philosophy is distilled in one crucial statement. The key is falling in love with something, anything. If your heart is attached to it, then your mind will be attached to it. This is the ultimate anti-mediocrity motto. We are often guilty in modern careers of just settling, of doing things we don't love but don't actively hate, which leads to this comfortable stagnation.
And Vera Wang's life demonstrates the immense power of deep, emotional, almost obsessive attachment to your work, which is what fuels the persistence needed to weather 8 years of financial loss in an RTW line.
Her success ultimately is a fusion. It's the fusion of artistic, visionary talent with the high-level practical business strategy and sheer grit she learned during her 2 decades of high-pressure corporate employment. She encourages critical thinking and resilience, the ability to adapt and pivot like she did multiple times, and the persistence to keep funding a line until it serves its strategic purpose.
And the final takeaway has to be the strength of the non-linear career path. Her trajectory skating failure, to Vogue editor rejection, to Ralph Lauren production director, to bridal entrepreneur at 40 is living proof that seemingly unrelated experiences provide unique, diversified perspectives and highly valuable skill sets necessary for breakthrough success later in life.
That 20-year period wasn't delay. It was strategic accrual of qualification, making her the perfectly balanced entrepreneur when the moment finally arrived.
So there it is, the deep dive into the true story of Vera Wang. The $650 million empire, the global brand synonymous with luxury and sophistication, wasn't built on a childhood dream immediately realized or some quick startup. It was built on a 40-year strategy of learning, pivoting, absorbing massive disappointments, and a steadfast refusal to be defined by early failures.
She was literally paid by the fashion industry, by Vogue and Ralph Lauren, to learn the critical skills, the creative processes, the political maneuvering, and the necessary business acumen for 2 decades before she finally found the industry she was truly meant to redefine. Age, in this context, is simply the accumulating of highly valuable, diversified experience.
And that directly relates to you, the learner. Whatever role you are in right now, whatever frustration or lack of fulfillment you are currently experiencing, understand that your current job is paying you to acquire transferable skills networking, cost management, technical understanding, resilience under pressure that you might apply to an entirely new breakthrough venture 10 or 20 years from now.
You should never underestimate the compounding value of professional experience, regardless of its industry title.
It brings us back to that crucial starting fund. Vera Wang's father invested the pivotal $4 million in her idea because he saw her drive in 2 decades of accrued, high-level professional skill. He didn't invest in a hobby. He invested in a qualified CEO.
So the provocative final thought we leave you with is this. What past failures, those things that felt like heartbreaks or brutal rejections, like not making the Olympic team or not getting that promotion, are actually the highly valuable, intangible assets that are currently qualifying you for your next great, truly defining leap. Keep learning, keep trying, and never, ever mistake your age for your finish line.